Welcome. Today's project's all about relationships with somebody who's struggling with anxiety. Through all my coaching sessions, I come across clients who have trouble with relationships, and it could be any relationships with your partner, with family, with friends. And for me, growing up, I always knew somebody struggling with anxiety. I struggled with GAD for many years with my parents at home and especially with Maggie. So I'm with Maggie today, and we're going to be talking about my journey, I guess, with GAD and the art gallery incident. I think comes to mind whenever I think of our relationship, because in our relationship there was a long period of time where I was struggling with anxiety, health anxiety, agoraphobia, and I couldn't leave my house. I was struggling, and it impacted our relationship a lot. So I brought Maggie on today so we can talk about how we dealt with being together while I was suffering from anxiety. So there was this art gallery incident where I had a panic attack. It was a very severe panic attack, and I just want Maggie to kind of elaborate on that and her point. I want to get her point of view on it and explain what happened.
Well, I think when we were just there for just for a regular visit to the art gallery for one of their exhibits, and then it was one of those particularly crowded ones, so we were having a bit of difficulty navigating through. And then in one of the galleries, when we were in one of the galleries, Brad suddenly told me that his heart is racing. And then I figured, it's probably because he's congested. It's a congested room, and anyone could have trouble with it. So I just asked him to sit down, and we sat down, we talked, and he said he was feeling okay. And the more I asked him, the more he said he's feeling fine. And then as he was lying down on me, one of the security guards came and asked if he were okay, because obviously you could see when a person is in distress. So, and then when he kept asking him what's wrong with him, I could see that Brad was getting more and more agitated, and his face was all flushed. And then he said, "I just have to get out of here." And then he left, and he just walked out of the gallery, and I didn't have enough time to follow him. He just stormed out. Yeah.
And what did you think? How that was happening to me? Did you? And you? I believe that you thought it was an actual physical illness that I had.
You said you were having heart palpitations, and you said you're feeling like your heart is beating so fast. And my first worry was when he went out there by himself, is because if he were to actually have a heart attack, there's nobody around, and I wasn't prepared to. Even if it was an actual physiological condition, I wouldn't have known what to do other than call an ambulance. And then I didn't know if I should call an ambulance or if I should try to follow him. And this was downtown Toronto. I mean, my chances of finding him in one of these streets it's pretty small. So I just went outside the gallery. I sat on one of the steps, and I told myself, I'll wait here until he gets in touch with me. So that's what I did, and I don't know if I did the right thing or the wrong thing. It's just, that's at the time, that's all I could think of.
And it left you confused, I bet.
It was very confusing, and I was very nervous. I obviously didn't want you to be alone somewhere if you were to have heart attack, or if you were to pass out. And then I didn't know how to communicate. I had no idea what health anxiety is like for somebody. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're tackling today, is like, what is health anxiety like in a relationship? Because it can be it could be devastating. I mean, at one point, I remember during that panic attack at the art gallery, there was this pressure on me of what you were thinking, because we were on this date. It wasn't far into our relationship, and there was this pressure when panic struck, when I had all of these bodily sensations. There was this severe pressure of like this judgment, and I talk about it a lot on this channel. There's this judgment of humiliating yourself in public, and I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I didn't want to humiliate myself. I felt like I was acting weird, checking on my heart, walking away to different parts of the art gallery. So, yeah, there was so much pressure.
Like, over the years, when we were talking about it, we realized that 50% of him having that anxiety attack, and he's panicking, and his body is in this overridden state, and then the other 50% is him trying to mask it from the rest of the crowd and me. So it must have been enormously of pressuring to yourself to do all that.
And that's kind of that is the reason why I then suffered from agoraphobia, as I didn't want to leave the house, and I didn't want to face that judgment. I didn't, because I was doing like another workshop at a college at the time too, so I didn't want to go to that, because I was afraid of going to a classroom and then being judged by those people in the class. So it was tough for us because of I was closed off too. Anxiety sufferers tend to be more closed off.
Very internal.
Yeah.
The other thing is, you meet someone, and then, for the first few months you have this, we were talking about this notion of delusional perfection, right? You think, he seems nice, he seems sociable, we've had great times, so, you don't really know what's going on in their lives, in the very personal spaces. So it can be very misleading when you meet somebody you don't know, right? And then you move on into the relationship, and you suddenly you're faced with all these things that this person is going through. So it can be really hard. I thought, because when we grew to care for each other, you want to be there for them, but it's difficult to be there for someone if you don't know what it is that bothers them so much.
Right. There's all these underlying issues.
Yeah.
And then that's the thing though, with all these underlying issues, anxiety sufferer can be so closed off. And like a lot of the time we were hanging out, and I was only giving you like one word answers, cutting the hangouts the dates short, and then I would spend a lot of time at home. And this was when the recovery process began. You had an incident with your dad, and then if you want to...
Yeah, my dad had a heart condition, so he was in the hospital, and just to put it lightly, and that was, I think, I've lived quite a privileged life for that to be the scariest thing that had ever happened to me. But nonetheless, it was very nerve-wracking. I wasn't myself. I don't usually struggle with a lot of anxiety myself. But during that time, I was constantly stressed, constantly anxious, not enough sleep, not enough food, not enough nourishment. It's just in a very, and then I'm internalizing, and I have all these other people who was just wonderful friends of mine would call me and say, can I come to the hospital and stay with you for a little bit? Can I bring you anything to eat? Can I bring you a cup of coffee and we can sit down outside the hospital and talk? But, I feel like at that point, I didn't want any of them. Because, people are different. And I myself can be very personal about things. So, the one person that I wanted there to be with me was Brad.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've ever asked anybody to come talk to me when I'm having a tough time. That was just the first time I asked Brad if he could, just come to the hospital. I'm just in a bad place. We got some bad news, and if he could come and just sit with me. Yeah.
And that was, deep down I felt there was this voice in me that, I should be there for her, but I was suffering from agoraphobia at this exact time where I didn't want to leave the house and go see her. And it was because I had debilitating anxiety. I had strong fears of just leaving and having something happen to me, maybe a heart attack, or maybe I'd faint from the panic. But I remember this was the beginning of my anxiety recovery. And I remember when the day of, I was sitting outside writing notes, listening to anxiety podcasts, trying to understand my anxiety, because I already got to that rock bottom point. So now I was kind of learning about it at this time. So, it's hard for an anxiety sufferer to be there for somebody. Like in Maggie's situation, I couldn't be there for her because of this debilitating fear.
And sorry, the other thing was that, throughout our relationship, even when we first met, he would never just leave me hanging anywhere. He was always so, kind and wonderful, just never left me hanging anywhere. And so I was really caught off guard. In my head, I thought, like, this is the man who would just, come and pick me up from school if I'm having any difficulty getting home or something. Yeah, just one phone call and he's there. And, we would be, it doesn't matter what the situation, he was always there. And then it was even more confusing when at the time I needed you the most, the answer I got was no from him. So it was very confusing. I just didn't expect it in the least bit. And
the thing with somebody suffering from anxiety is that I don't know how to explain to Maggie exactly what I'm going through, because I don't even know myself. I didn't know I was suffering from like health anxiety. I started to learn. This was about the same time I was writing notes, listening to anxiety podcasts, but I was confused about it. But more importantly, I was just still closed off about it. So with the combination of the debilitating anxiety, the confusion, and the overwhelming emotions I had every day, it was too unbearable for me at the time to go and see her. So somebody with anxiety in a relationship, it's difficult to get any sort of honest communication, especially if they're closed off, if they're really suffering. It's hard for Maggie to put herself into my shoes. And
it's just the lack of empathy, right? It's just any sort of mental condition. It's not like you scrape your leg. We all at one point scraped our leg, and we know how it hurts. But when it comes to something like health anxiety, for example, or even agoraphobia, for someone who doesn't suffer from it, you can't really empathize with the people who do, because for one person it will be so easy to pop their jacket on and get out of the house, when for other person it's just really emotionally draining experience. And so that's the difficult part, the communication from his part and understanding from my part.
So, and it's difficult being with somebody, because I find that it can be easy for them to drag you down, like emotionally. I bet you it was so.
Well, at the time when I was in the hospital, what happened was, previously there were situations where he wasn't able to get out of the house, but I just didn't think too much of it. I just thought, you know how you just rationalize in your head, oh, he's probably busy, that's fine, we'll meet up another day, no harm done. Or just, you know, if he cancels in the last minute, I'm like, totally fine, I have this thing to do anyway. So I would always slide things off without really thinking about it. But at that time, not only he's anxious and he's struggling, and I was very anxious, so we were basically bouncing that negative energy off each other, which is, it just, you know, it just adds up, right? It adds up, and then and instead of being able to talk to myself rationally like I usually do, in that particular moment I started having these negative thoughts, like maybe he doesn't care about me as much as I think he did, or, you know, negativity takes over you, right?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking that, oh, maybe he's just the type of guy who's there for the good times, but who doesn't want to be there for the bad times. And that's a very scary thought for anybody who wants to be in a relationship with someone.
Yeah, because a lot of people tell us, you know, oh, you guys are just so great together, you guys are so natural together. And I always think in my mind, you know, that it's so easy to say for someone else to say that, but in my mind, the amount of hell that we pushed through really shaped who we are now, and all the techniques I've developed, and then the techniques and my lifestyle habits that kind of they would naturally absorb into Maggie and the people around me. And so not only did I benefit from my recovery, the people around me benefited from it. They learned from me, and I was more open to learn from Maggie. So during the recovery process, it's important to really persevere through that resistance and keep on going, because there's this part of you where
I think of, you know, there's that part of you that always wants to really come through that, and then it's just, the problem is, to people around you, it's not always visible. I feel like one of the greatest things that happened to us is when he started becoming really interested in recovery, and then he would be more open about the things he would be doing at home, instead of telling me, oh, hey, I can't make it today. He would tell me, I can't make it today because I'm doing this, I'm listening to this seminar. And over time we started doing these things together too, which helped me enormously, because, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, even for anybody in your life, knowledge and education is what you need, right? And you start to read about these things and listen to people. I mean, one thing that really helped me understand what he was going through was that was listening to people's stories. I thought that was such a great way to understand how somebody else is feeling. Like there's so many people on YouTube or anywhere else, or bloggers out there. They write their stories, or they tell their stories. They're just so they're so raw and vulnerable, and you start to really empathize with them, right? And even with Brad, the first time I really understood, or not understood, like I really felt what he was feeling, was when he did the first video for this channel. Yeah. The first video he did for this channel, I was crying at the end of it, because I just felt like I can't believe this is what he was going through this whole time. Like, it must have been so difficult for him.
And that's the thing, though, with anxiety sufferers, is that, you know, it's hard for the other person, the family member, to put themselves in their shoes. It's just so difficult. And so we gathered solutions in this video, ways that you can help that person out if they're struggling. If your partner or friend or family member is struggling, this is a great way to get them really see the other side of the coin. It was really what it was for me was to widen my perspective, widen my gaze, because I was only seeing just such a minimal aspect of what was really going on, the whole. So I think the first one is watching videos and listening to podcasts and reading books about people who overcame challenges and know how to get better, because that's one of the things is that you want to learn how that person overcame it, right? And so that kind of opens up your eyes. It opens up.
Yeah. I mean, the first step is knowledge and role models, having role models. And I think these things get you started. And then what you can do is you can communicate about the things that you find out, in respect to what we're looking for. So he's looking for how to recover. I would be looking for how to help him recover, right? It's just, and then when you bring that amount of knowledge together and information together, then it just really works, right?
And another great way is, persevere and persistence, because that person suffering from anxiety, they're going to want to go back to their old ways. It's hard to get to a point where you can actually see yourself progressing in some way, because it's difficult to change your habits, to change your ways of thinking, to develop a new lifestyle. It's going to push you back. You're going to have to sacrifice so many things in your life. And I had to sacrifice a lot of things in our relationship. I sacrificed those negative friends. I sacrificed the junk foods that we would always eat. I would sacrifice like TV time, video games, and I would only schedule like an hour of TV a day, and the rest of the day was spent with quality time between us or whatever stuff we had to do. So what other things?
One of the things that I really wanted to bring up was I remember, so for example, let's just say you would say you have a pain in your back or your shoulder blades hurt or something like that. I would just trying to get in there, right? I would try to get in there and like get to the root of the problem.
You would try and help.
Yeah, I want, I obviously care for him, so I want to help. I want to solve his problems for him. I think that's something a lot of partners tend to do.
Yeah. And did you find that it was a lot of pressure to do that, to help me?
Well, it's not really a pressure. I mean, it's like
I guess it's like a wanting.
It's like when if you were to get sick, you would make him a cup of soup, and then because you know what's bothering him and you know how to help. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out, is it did he hurt it? Did he hit it somewhere? Did he pull it? Or there was a time when you said you might have a UTI, and then I was very nervous because he would say he might see blood in his urine or things like that, and then that would bother me enormously because I'm with him for such a long amount of time, but I don't see any physical symptoms, and sometimes I wonder, like, am I not as attentive as I think I am? Am I self-centered? Is this why I'm not noticing things about him?
Right. So it was a challenge for me because if I didn't change myself, our relationship would have suffered immensely. I mean, that's one of the things I really had to say to myself was, how would my relationship be like a year from now if I actually overcame anxiety? And I had to really ask myself these questions, and I really thought about it, and I knew that I needed to change my internal world and change myself in order for us to change eventually. So I had to spend a lot of time by myself, even just studying and reading about it and surrounding myself with these role models and just literally studying or preparing for a movie role. Like, literally when an actor prepares for their role, they embody this new person. They listen to the tapes of these people if it's a character that already existed in life. So they really immerse themselves in that, and I had to do that for me to become a different person. I had to immerse myself in this new person. How did this person act? How did they talk? What was their posture like? What was their breathing like? What was their routines like? And I had to really change everything. And then once everything changed, and then I persevered through that resistance,
Yeah,
we changed. I think.
And I always remember during those years, he would always ask me, how have I changed? Do you notice any changes? Or if so, what are they? So he's very curious about how other people are perceiving his change, because ultimately, if others are not seeing all these things, then you gotta wonder, right? And how did me trying to poke around, finding what's bothering you, trying to solve your problems, I later realized it may have been counterproductive. How did that make you feel?
Well, it made me feel with anxiety. I was very high strung. I was agitated, so I was kind of hostile. I think at first, like kind of like trying to change the subject, I guess you can say. I had a little bit of frustration because like when somebody's trying to get you to open up as an anxiety sufferer, for me it was like,
you don't know how I feel.
You don't know how I feel. Yeah. Like, and a lot of my family did that to me too.
And he's right.
Yeah, they
because
don't know.
We don't know how he feels.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Eventually, we don't know how he feels. So, yeah.
Yeah, so a solution to that, I think, is that even with these videos and the Anxiety Project channel, like the video of a day in the life of a health anxiety sufferer, that video on my channel, give that video to somebody who's suffering from anxiety. That video describes the day in the life, really detailed, of what suffering from health anxiety is like.
Yeah, I mean that video is really great for people who do suffer from anxiety disorders, but I think it really helps for people who are with these people. This is the people who are in relationships with these people who suffer from anxiety, because that's the primary way you're going to build any sense of empathy. It's because when I watched that video the first time, it was just so inconceivable for me. Like, how does one go through that? And the sometimes I see him. This would be the weekend, so he hasn't gone to work that day, and it's just a Saturday afternoon, and then my energy level would be like at the 90s, 90%, and he would be just so drained. He's so tired, he's exhausted, and then I don't know why. And then sometimes your mind wonders, does he not want to do this? Like, does he not want to be around us? So the day in the life of anxiety sufferer really, really put things in order, and just listening to that is honestly it's tiring, because
So at the art gallery, it would have helped tremendously if you knew I was suffering from a panic attack. You could have told me, hey, Brad, this is anxiety, this is panic, and having the knowledge of what panic and anxiety is would have helped me. But instead, you thought it was really a heart condition, because she believed me. And then at the art gallery, when I told Maggie, I'm having this heart situation, she checks my pulse. She says my heart's racing, and her reaction to that made me react even more to my anxiety.
Yeah.
It's actually snowballed.
I remember that actually.
Yeah.
It did. Because I remember taking your pulse, and his heart rate was, it was off the roof. And and then that's when he was first saying his heart was palpating, his heart was beating really fast, I wanted him to take a step back. I didn't think think that much of it. And then I slowly took his heart pulse, and then I realized he's not kidding. His pulse was off the roof, and then he saw that, okay, now she thinks I have a heart problem too. Yeah. And had I known what was actually going on, I would know that because he's anxious, naturally his pulse is high. Yeah. Because I know Brad talks about this a lot in his channel about the fight or flight. And yeah, we learned that in school, but we never really learned how to apply it.
Yeah.
So yeah, had I known it, I would have definitely been able to guide him and redirect his thoughts.
So to end this video, what are some of the solutions? I know we touched on all these already, but to sum up, what are the solutions that you can give to somebody in a relationship suffering from anxiety?
I mean, first thing is you have to do your homework.
Yeah.
You have to do your homework. Brad would be reading his books, watching his videos, older in the other side of the city when he couldn't see me, and I used that time to actually learn about what's going on with him. So you have to do your homework. I mean, relationships are work, but people, they weren't kidding about it. They weren't kidding. It's a lot of work on both parts, and you just can't give up. And as long as you see your partner on an upward trajectory, if you see them that they're trying, you have to, I mean, if you do care about them, and if you want them in your life, then you have to put work into it as well.
I would even say to give them more space to like figure it out and to really persevere through this challenge.
Yeah. And it's good because I was very much willing to give him all the space he needed. And I used that time to work on myself. I did my homework, and it really, it's beneficial for me because it builds independence, and you can learn to care for someone without being attached by the hip all the time. You can keep them in your thoughts, and yeah.
I would also say that it's also good to express your frustrations, but also to express your care for the person, to know that you're there for them, and that you'll always be there for them, and that you can come to me whenever you're having difficulty. I think that's really important. So I hope this video has helped you in any which way, and I'm going to get Maggie back on here eventually. So we got so much to talk about in the future. And lastly, do you want to say it?
Thank you for having me. I hope this helped you, and thank you for listening.
And don't let anxiety define who you are. See you on the next video. Bye for now.
Good luck.
Remember to hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be the first to know. Namaste.